Hi there, it's Rachel Thexton here at SocialPacific 2025 in Vancouver, recording live, and we are doing a special Marketing News Canada podcast. I am a podcaster with Rachel Thexton Connects, also PR professional with Thexton PR, but I am fortunate to sit down here today. My first guest of the morning is Charlie Grinnell, and he is the co-CEO of RightMetric and will be telling us the new rules of marketing today
Oh
at
boy,
Social Pacific.
no pressure.
So we're going to chat a little bit about that.
Can't wait.
Let's do it.
Cool.
So let me start with this. On your website, you describe supporting clients with assumptions that they are making about marketing. What are a couple assumptions that clients make that you really have to support them with debunking and clarifying?
Yeah. So we're a research firm. So that's what RightMetric is. And we do something what we call marketing outsight. Everyone talks about insight, which is looking at your own kind of internal data. We specialize in something called outsight, which is looking externally and helping brands make sense of what's going on around them. And so I worked for many years on the brand side. I worked in house at Aritzia, which is hilarious because look at me. For those of you who can't see me, I'm a bald bearded man. I also worked in house at Red Bull and at Arc'teryx. So I worked on the brand side for many years. And when I was working on the brand side, we always had a really good idea of how we were doing. But whenever we were trying to figure out how we were doing in comparison to the rest of the ecosystem, it was really hard, right? We could do a little bit of social listening. We would do some traditional market research where we'd get a bunch of weirdos in a room and ask them questions and they would lie to us. And then we would go listen to them and make decisions that were wrong.
Right.
And so, yeah, as I was kind of sitting in house, I realized that there was this opportunity to build a company that looks externally and harnesses a whole bunch of digital data sets. And so that's how we started RightMetric 8 years ago. So bringing that back to all of these assumptions,
Yeah.
we all have assumptions in our lives, but especially in our businesses, and especially when, we have biases and we're in an industry for a long time and, this is my experience in this thing. I think it's really, really important for marketers specifically to understand that you are likely not your target customer.
Yeah.
And also, even if you are the target customer, your experience with something is probably very, very different than the experience of everybody else. And I think what's been really unique for me in running a company like this is I think we've outputted now over 500,000 pages of research in our 8 years. And the biggest learning that I've had in those 8 years of like outputting that much research is I don't know shit. I might have a stereotype or something where I'm like, oh, this is for sure how this person or this industry behaves. And holy moly, am I wrong? So that's what we mean when we say challenging assumptions and maybe having uncomfortable conversations. But the purpose is to ultimately drive the business further forward.
Research, data, we're talking about areas that sound simple but are actually incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
When you're doing research, external research, what are some of the tools you use that are actually effective versus those, having a few people in a room for some questions or, tell us a little bit about, the practical tools that you put into effect.
So I want to start with, I was a C- math student in high school. So it's like very ironic that I run like a research and analytics company because my high school math teacher would be on the floor dying right now, being like, yo, you barely passed. So I think that's like where I'll start with. Like, I think this idea of data and analytics in marketing, we all think it's really important. If we asked everybody here today at Social Pacific, is it important? They would all say yes. Where it gets interesting, and this is why focus groups are a little shaky, I think, is if you go, do you consider yourself well-versed in analytics or data?
Right.
And most people would say yes. And then I think, would you go, okay, can you show me? Then you'd see people be like, well, I don't know, right? So we all know it's really, really important, but I also think that data and analytics has this like intimidation factor because people think back to, oh, I wasn't good at math in high school.
Yes.
Therefore, like, keep that away from me.
Right.
And so I think in my case, like, I've never really been a good student in school. And so when I first got into marketing, I really wanted to learn the data piece. Wasn't really about like, oh, I want to go be a data scientist and calculate a whole bunch of things. It was really about how can I quantify behavior and get an understanding of like, do people like the shit I'm doing or not?
Yeah.
Like if I'm making a video, if I'm doing a post, if I'm whatever, is it working? Yes or no? And so then that kind of taught me to go, okay, I need to focus in on these specific metrics. And then, okay, what are the simple calculations we need to make related to these metrics? And how are these metrics signals of behavior? So I want to start with that around like data and analytics. To the question about like what data sources do we use and what tools do we use, we're big believers in this concept of triangulating the truth. So you heard me talk earlier about how like social listening at one point in time was a big thing. Now that's kind of like gone away because all the platforms have cracked down on APIs and that sort of thing. When we say triangulate the truth digitally, we go out and we use tools like SimilarWeb to gather web traffic visits. Tubular Labs is for video views. We use Pathmatics to see ad spend. We use SparkToro. So we use over 30 different tools to grab all this stuff. Now, what RightMetric does is we pull it all into one place, and then we have a team of analysts and strategists that are way smarter than I am that can like pull it together, slice and dice it, and help businesses make decisions from it. But the whole point of it is how can you actually get a holistic picture of what's happening so that you can actually, and sometimes that holistic picture for businesses isn't a good one,
Yeah.
but it's you're trying to triangulate the truth, right? And so a lot of our time is sometimes spent with very uncomfortable conversations because it's like, oh, well, we've been doing this for 3 years thinking this was the right thing, or our agency told us this, or a certain person internally told us this was the right thing to do. And it's like, well, now that you can actually see the whole field that you're playing on, is it the right thing to do? I don't know.
I was just going to ask you about that. So the tough conversations,
Oh yeah.
right? I assume you have more challenging ones than you've been doing everything perfectly. The data matches, you're on the right
Yeah.
path. So when you're approaching those conversations, how do you do that? And do you come in with kind of data related solutions, or do you kind of pass that off to kind of
Yeah.
referring to other sources?
So number one, I think a lot of the stuff we're doing, oftentimes we're brought in when brands are kind of like, we don't know where else to look. So that's number one. And it's usually a very hard problem to solve.
Mhm.
So number two, it's also just educating, hey, did you even know this data exists? Like the amount of times where, I'll be talking to someone at a conference or something and they're like, oh, like we're just struggling with this. And I go, oh, well, like, didn't you look at, XYZ? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I can't get that. And I'm like, go buy this tool, this tool, this tool. Go buy it and go do it. Like it's there, right? So I think number one is like just educating that these data sets exist. That's I think what's really exciting for us as marketers is like in the last 5 years, the data
Mhm.
sets that have come online for us to use, there's more data than ever before. Now that can be a blessing and a curse. But if you, are able to harness them and figure out which are the right ones, then you can use them. In terms of the conversations around like having tough conversations, number one, none of it is ever personal.
Right.
I'm not sitting here being like, oh, we're going to get Mark fired or we're going to get Sarah fired. That's not the thing. It's like, hey, how can we arm you with a more complete picture? And, Mark and Sarah might have made those decisions over the last 3 years because the map they had in front of them directed them that way,
Yeah.
but it was an incomplete map.
Right.
So it's not ever personal. But I think that with the world that we're all operating in from a marketing perspective, it's so competitive. Like the world is
Mhm.
so noisy.
Mhm.
And if we think about kind of like supply and demand, we talk about this concept a lot with our customers. We're kind of reaching peak internet saturation in the Western world, right? Like a lot of internet growth is happening in developing parts of the world, right? You see Meta putting balloons over Africa to give countries internet access, right? Whereas like most people in North America, Europe, Asia, like, yeah, we've all had a smartphone and we're all kind of doing our thing. So we've kind of plateaued in terms of
Yeah.
the demand, but the supply is through the roof,
Yes.
right? Like
Overwhelming.
over like how many, like the amount of content being created every day, and if there are only 24 hours and each person only has 2 eyes, 1 brain, and 2 ears,
Mhm.
like there's a supply and demand thing there. And so the bar to earn someone's attention is so high, right? And so what breaks through, and I think this is like a marketing cliche, is like, how do you break through the noise? But like it is so hard. And like the level of sophistication that it's actually happening now, and this is an example that I always give to people, is Mr. Beast, the world's biggest YouTuber, has a thumbnail team. Not a video team, a thumbnail team. So there's people, filming us right now. There's a separate team that makes the thumbnail for YouTube. And that's what their job is full time, is how do we make thumbnails to optimize?
And that's just to ensure that the thumbnail itself
Pull
is
someone
gonna
in.
wow.
That's how competitive it is. So that's the world's biggest YouTuber, right? But brands are like this too. Red Bull has a thumbnail team. A lot of these media companies now have thumbnail teams. So we do a lot in financial services. So I have a lot of very nice people who work in financial services who say, we want to be the Red Bull of banking. And I go, that's cute. You don't have a thumbnail team. Like, but just understand what you're up against, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like saying, hey, I just learned how to dribble a basketball. I want to be the Harlem Globetrotters. You can't even hit the net yet. What are you talking about?
Mhm.
So that's not to be cynical. I just think it's like that's the level of competition again, because that attention is finite. There's only so much of it, right? We've kind of
I,
reached saturation.
I would think that people, if they're smart, are going to find your deliverance of this information refreshing because it's, it can be hard. Some people kind of skirt around the truth, which is the wrong thing to do. Clearly, you're not going to know the path to take to kind of improve the way you've been going if you've been heading in the wrong direction, which is likely. I wanted to ask you about, brands, what kind of brands primarily you're working with. You mentioned financial services. Any other sectors, and can you kind of give us an example of where you've kind of been able to, not naming specific brands, but maybe industry, where you've been able to redirect and how?
Yeah, so we do a lot in financial services, we do a lot in retail, we do a lot in consumer packaged goods. So basically how I say is like primarily it's consumer brands, and that's mainly because the data sets are there. Now, we can do some B2B stuff, but I say like some, there's probably an asterisk there because the data sets can start to break down when you're going like really, really niche B2B. Like, I think about, let's say you wanted to know about the behavior of urban planners in Canada. Well, there's like 150 of them. So finding how they behave on the internet is like very, very hard because now you're starting to get into like personally identifiable information, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like if you're trying to figure out like how people behave for like athleisure or yoga pants, like the data sets are big enough, it's anonymized, and like legally you're good. So yeah, a lot of the stuff we focus on are primarily audience research. So
Okay.
hey, we're trying to understand this group of people. So it might be we are trying to market to this group. It might mean, hey, we think that there's a growth opportunity with this group. It might mean, hey, we have a new product that we're coming to market with, or we're going into a new market, like a new region. So those are typical things that come across our desk. Another one is benchmarking. So just getting an understanding of, hey, we don't know how we're doing. How are we doing? Like we're starting to slip, but we can't really figure out why. Is the category slipping,
Right.
or is it just us? So we do a lot of that sort of stuff. And then we do a lot of work in content insight specifically. And the kind of hypothesis that we've had over the last 5 years probably is when you think about content as a line item in a marketing budget, it's a shitload of cash.
Yeah.
And when I was at Red Bull and Aritzia, we spent a ton of cash on content. But content has typically been, it costs a lot, hand it over, and like hopefully you get something back that's on brief that you can use. But now, if we think about where that content is ending up, it's ending up on all these platforms, and all those platforms now have metrics that show us, what is the view duration? Where's drop-offs? What's the retention curves? You can see what's on the screen versus where someone dropped off. All of a sudden, that changes the way you write briefs, which changes the way that these people shoot, which changes the way that the post-production person does the edit, which changes the way the graphics are done, which, right? Like on and on and on and on and on. And again, if we go back to the point of attention is so finite, that stuff matters. And actually, the engineering of content becomes so critical. And again, I'll use Mr. Beast or any brand that does a great job of retaining audience and retaining attention. They are maniacal about this. They are crazy about this. They obsess over what's the first thing on screen? What's in the first 1.5 seconds? What happens in the first 3 seconds? How are we constantly rehooking them?
Yeah.
And that is the level of kind of like obsession that you need to actually hold someone's attention through. And I think oftentimes we as marketers have been like, oh, here's the brand creative campaign. Like off you go. Let's let the creatives go after it. And I'm not trying to shit on creatives because I got my start in video production. Like I was just nerding out with the guys here about camera stuff. But it's a different world now. And so I actually think as a creative, I would love to work back in production now because I'd be like, what's the thing that I could make that would break the internet? Because there's now more inputs that I can take to engineer something to get more views.
I'm intrigued. And because I'm thinking of my business, I'm thinking of my podcast, I'm thinking I have been doing it wrong. I need your help. No, in all seriousness, it's because this is the thing is that really when a service provider, whether you be in marketing, public relations, social media support, very rarely are clients keen or executing a where are we exactly to start.
Totally.
And it's vital.
Yeah. Well, I just go, to me, it's negligent if you don't start with that.
Right.
Like what you can, I'll take your money and make you a campaign.
Yeah.
It's going to be not good for you, and it's going to be fine for me in the short term because it's not going to perform for you. I'm going to take your money. We're going to go our separate ways. Well, I want to have you as a customer forever. And you want something that does great for your business, right? And so I just think like there's so many misalignment in incentives between a lot of those relationships. And I just think that to me, we have such a luxury as marketers in the ability to look before we leap.
Right.
And it is crazy to me how often we don't look before we leap with massive dollars. Like we're going to jump off, hey, we're going to spend this. And you go, huh, have you ever like thought, like double checked if that's like the right thing? Ah, well, it was like 3 years ago. And you're like, okay, 3 years ago when people were like, should we be on TikTok?
So why are so many companies not looking before they leap? Why are they, for example, spending insane amounts of money on ads?
Yeah.
When they could be doing, perhaps effective engagement to audiences in which your data would show they'd connect with.
How much time you got? No, I'm kidding. But I think I go, there's a few things. One, ego.
Yeah.
Like the people internally, ego. 2, bias. Like, hey, we've kind of always done it this way. We couldn't possibly change.
Right.
Like I sit on the board of a nonprofit, and I was talking to the comms director a couple days ago, and someone on her team joined, she joined after, and the person on her team was like, well, we have to post every day. And the comms director was like, why? And it's like, well, that's what we've always done. Right. So like, I think there are like institutional things that just like don't make sense. And it was like, it was gospel 3 years ago. So we just like do this. I also think the industry, and when I say the industry, I mean like big digital advertising. So I'm talking Meta, I'm talking Google, whatever, has been like, yeah, you put your $1 in and we'll spit you out 4 at the end. Right. And so that dream has kind of, I think, been sold to businesses, and it still can work. Like performance marketing absolutely still works, but it's way more competitive. And it's not the good old days of 2015 where you put a loonie in and you get $5 out. Right. So I think all of those things starting to compound. And then finally, I'll go back to the point where people think data and analytics and they go, I was bad at math in high school. No.
They avoid it.
Or they go, I'm a creative marketer.
Yeah.
And I go, to me, I think marketing is art for the sake of commerce being the key word. And I think about the way that you can actually reverse engineer all this stuff. Everyone, like, again, the biggest YouTuber in the world who is the most like artistic, I say Mr. Beast, he's actually put out his whole YouTube strategy documents. They're like 300-page PDFs, and the level of detail is insane. And it's like, he's reverse engineered the whole thing. He's studied the playbook. And so I just think it's so interesting how, you kind of have this like 1990s Mad Men era, like, we're just going to make the campaign and like off it goes. So
with
it's a
big
larger,
brands.
with huge brands.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we like the amount of money, and I'm sitting on all the data. Like we could look at a brand right now and show you how much money they pour into something. And then you see the return of it and you're like, whoa, that didn't work.
Yeah.
And then you see other brands who are punching way above their weight.
Right.
That, like, I'll give an example. So we did a teardown on Poppy, the 0 calorie soda.
Yes.
They punch way above their weight. Now they've been acquired, but they like in their marketing, like what they spend and what they generate from a numbers perspective, digitally is wild. And they're so efficient because they're so plugged into culture and they're so agile. Pepsi would kill to have the efficiency that Poppy does. Now, Pepsi doesn't need that because they're Pepsi, right? They're 100-year-old, whatever. But I just think there's so much that we can learn from looking at external, both at how audiences behave, but also what's working well and what's not working well, right? Because oftentimes, I always used to have this when I sat on the brand side, someone would forward me an article from Ad Age, or they'd forward me a campaign and goes, oh, this is so awesome. They're killing it. And I go, are they? Like, you thought it was dope, but like, how did this campaign actually perform for them? Did it drive them a ton of traffic? Did it make a noticeable bump in their sales? Or did it just hit your emotional heartstring that you decided to forward it to me? And also you forwarding it to me, like there's no context to anchor it. So that's crazy to me. Where the behavior I just described is happening right now, today, as we speak in marketing departments, where someone's sending someone to someone being like, oh, did you see this? They're killing it. Are they killing it? I don't know.
Yeah. So there's a lot of smoke and mirrors.
I think.
Wow.
Maybe that's an unpopular take, but I think so.
No, that resonates with me, and scares me, but it resonates with me definitely. So at RightMetric, from what I understand, you are the world's only on-demand provider of custom digital strategy research.
Yeah, that'd be a good summary.
So tell me about what differentiates you. Why isn't anyone else doing what you're doing?
Because it's really hard. I think is like when we started this, I'll tell the story. So my co-founder and I, we started this and we were like, oh, let's do this external research. So this is 2018. So we went out and we bought some social listening tools. Great. We went out, we got our first customer. Cool. And then that customer was like, hey, this is awesome. Can you also look into this for us? And it was now web stuff, but we didn't have a web tool. Okay, well, we need to go out and buy the access to that data set. And they're like, oh, this is awesome. Could you look into our mobile app? And we're like, oh shit, we don't have a mobile app tool. So we went out and bought that data set. So like as we started, it was kind of like pulling the thread on the sweater. And before you know it, now we have access to all these tools and data sets. So that was step one, was like get access to all of the different tools and data sets. Number two was, how can we actually build methodologies that pull all that data together in one place, both from like an operational perspective, like land all the data in one place, which is a pain in the butt. And number two, how can we make sense of it in a way that doesn't skew anything so that you can actually have an accurate picture? And then step three is, how do we take that and not put that out in a dashboard that puts people to sleep? Because what marketers want, what we found in talking to our own customers, is they just want an answer. They don't want another dashboard or a tool to log into. So that's actually why we didn't build a SaaS tool. Because like, you know, every entrepreneur, business coach who's ever come near me says, oh, you need to build a SaaS tool. Yet every single customer of ours who have been customers for a long time says, you build a SaaS tool, we're not continuing on with you, right? Because they value that translation layer. And so what we've started to specialize in is kind of this data storytelling, because the way that people consume information, and if you can make data more accessible, people really start to warm up to it. And it can be very, very it can be helpful to them. And so it's those layers: access to the data, the ability to slice, dice, pull it all together and do it in a way that's like relevant and statistically significant, et cetera. And then how can we design it in a way that doesn't make it look like, you know, business intelligence software from IBM in 1998?
Yeah. Okay, listen, I have two more questions for you. One of them is related to what you just mentioned.
Sure.
And that is translating the data.
Yeah.
So I imagine dealing with the average consumer, customer, you are having to translate what to you is and your team is perfectly understandable into terms and explanations that they can really kind of absorb and know what to do with. How do you do that?
You're probably going to chuckle at my answer. It all starts with language. So I'll give an example. Is it a web visit or a session? They're the same.
Right.
But like, can we actually get clear on what people mean? And I think in marketing, I don't know if this is like an insecurity thing for marketers. We tend to use a lot of buzzwords and jargon, more so than any other area of business. Ops people don't really use it. Finance people don't really use it. I think we seem to use it because there's this deep insecurity in marketing.
Yes.
For whatever reason. Yeah. And I think that's because no one ever questions the accountants on if they're doing their job right, but everyone seems to question marketing on like, is that Instagram post right?
Yes.
And so I think like we tend to overdress things from a buzzwords perspective, which actually creates a whole bunch of confusion. So number one, it starts with language. So when we start with customers, we're actually like, tell us about your business. And then we ask like dumb second and third questions. They're like, oh yeah, like we go, how many visits, how many monthly visits do you get to your site? And they'll say, oh, we get, 6,000 sessions. And we're like, okay, what is a session? And they're like, a visit. And we're like, okay, cool. Now we're establishing a definition and getting really, really clear. Because again, when we're done, we want to go back to them in their language and their dialect so that it comes in natural to them, right? If that sounds crazy, maybe you're right, but it's like these things matter so much because also what you're trying to do is you're trying to build trust, right? Because oftentimes when when brands are working with us, it's their first time. And often they're going, whoa, wow, I'm seeing new things that might challenge assumptions that we've had or whatever. So getting that language right is so critically important. So that's really the starting point. Then it's actually, we break things down. We don't hide. So our methodologies, we go, hey, you asked us to answer this question, this business question. Here's how we approached answering that business question. Here are all the data sets that we went out and gathered.
Right.
Here's why they're relevant. And here's how we've structured them together. And here are the learnings. Okay. So we kind of show our work because it's not just like, here's the answer's C. It's like very, very laid out in that way. And it's designed to be quite visual and easy to understand and interpret. Because again, you might be a visual learner. I
Yes.
might be someone who needs to sit and think and read. Everyone does it differently. So we're also spending a lot of time working on how can we deliver information to people in a way that is native to them. And so one of the things that I'm pushing our team on right now is like, how do we start delivering our updates in short form video? Because what do we do all day, every day? We're sitting there doing this. Instead of getting a big deck, you still need the deck maybe for the meeting. But like, what if you got something to your inbox where it's like you can watch a 60-second reel that like gives you the TLDR of like what's up? I bet that's going to help you retain it more than me hitting you with like a 58 slide deck with some charts, even if it is nice visual design using your language or whatever. So
Sure.
I think again that like last mile of like how can we spoon feed the information, and I don't mean that in like a derogatory way, but
No,
like
no.
literally marketers are inundated. How can we actually make it easy for them to understand? Because yeah, it's one of many inputs that they're getting.
Let's finish off by asking about success.
Oh boy.
What does success look like to you, or what has a successful campaign look like to you when it comes to you really feeling like we were able to gather incredibly insightful data,
Yeah.
deliver it to the client, they understood it, they got it, they implemented it, things changed for them?
Yeah, I mean, I have an example of a client, but I actually have one when I worked in house that I think was like the seed planted for this company that I'll
Okay.
use instead. So I used to work in house at Red Bull, and we were doing this is about 10 years ago. And so we were doing our annual business planning. And so every year you do a business plan. What are the things that we're going to do next year as Red Bull in Canada? And so we were tasked with building a repeatable content format because Red Bull touches so many different things, right? Ski, snow, mountain bike, music, basketball, like they touch everything. So as someone who is working on the digital marketing team, it's like, how do we create a format that we can use that's repeatable across all those things? And so anecdotally, my colleague and I had noticed we were, going across all these different websites. And this is kind of like social was there, but it was like the website still had, you could go to, Trans World Snowboarding and they would have their video page. And that's where all the best videos for snowboarding were. And then you'd go to Pink Bike for mountain biking. And that's where all the mountain bike videos were. And so this is before there was any research tools.
Right.
And we just kind of started like doing our own desk research, like cruising around. We're watching what's going on in the industry. And we noticed that like there was this trend that we were seeing. And a lot of the action sports videos at the time, everything was using slow motion because of the new fancy cameras. Everything could be slowed down, and things that like didn't need to be slowed down.
Right.
And then everyone was using dubstep music,
Oh.
that like womp 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 like
Yes,
music,
yes,
right?
yes.
I can't believe I just said that on a podcast, but it is true. That's what it was. And so like it was like slow motion and dubstep, and it was like this cliche of like, oh, here's another video with something that's way too slow that doesn't need to be slow that has dubstep behind it. And so we started looking around, and what we noticed is the top 10 videos across all the sites were basically that, but there were a couple outliers. And the outliers all had a few things in common. There was no slow motion, no music, and they were roughly 100 seconds long. The videos. That was just like we're just kind of watching videos, and we were like sitting there, and and it's think about like your like campaign planning. Like we're in a boardroom, we're ordering food, like we're like, how do we get all this stuff in? Because then we have to present it to the global team for them to say, hey, you're good to go. So we were like, what if we just like did something, and we made a video series, 100 seconds long, no slow motion, no music, raw sounds, and we call it Raw 100. And so we were like, yeah, sounds good. Put it on a slide, submit. The budget gets approved, and we're not talking like a lot of budget. Like I think the very first one, I think we were going to do videos for $500, which are like that's nothing. And so I went out to my network, and we contacted like 5 or 6 different producers, and I was like, hey, we have $500. I'll give you $500. And they were like, okay, Charlie, like, and I was like, you can use old footage. You don't even have to film something new, but like, I just need a deliverable like this. And if you give us that deliverable, we'll also do a profile on redbull.com about you. And so we got these back, and this one filmmaker named Rupert Walker went out and shot this thing with an athlete named Brandon Semenuk, and it blew up. It did like a few million views in like the first thing. And then the next year we were like, okay, like let's do this for real. And so we ended up getting more budget approved. And now it's done over 250 million video views since then. And so like this format came from us looking externally,
Yeah.
manually,
Mhm.
like a total pain in the ass. I would never do that today. The tools can do that today.
Right.
But yeah, now like it's huge. And if you go to Whistler during Crankworks, people are like, oh yeah, Raw 100 videos, that's crazy. Like I grew up watching all of them. And I think our sign of success was, number one, it generated a lot of views, but number two is other brands started to copy them. So Red Bull had this thing called Raw 100, but then all of a sudden Trek and all these other brands were like, here's our Raw 100. And we're like, okay, that's kind of our concept, but like cool that they're doing it. And so what, like when other people are joining in on like the challenge, like I think about like ALS Ice Bucket Challenge, as soon as
Yes.
people are starting to join in, you as a communications person would be like, that's genius, right? If you can get other people to join in. Yeah, so we had that happen. And so that's something that I look back on fondly. And again, all of it came from, I'm going to use air quotes here, data, but it was like anecdotally of us just kind of poking around being internet sleuths and going, oh yeah, there's something there. Yeah.
So data, this has been a incredibly insightful conversation to start the morning. You've definitely woke me up, and I need to go change a lot of things and get your information. Speaking here with Charlie Grinnell, co-CEO of RightMetric. He has broken down data and the work that he does in data and research in a way that I think most organizations might want to consider and listen carefully to. Where are you? How are you performing? Are you doing things just status quo? Might be worth evaluating and speaking with Charlie Grinnell and his team at RightMetric. So great to chat with you today.
Thank you very much for having me.
It
Can't
was,
wait to the next one.
Incredibly insightful, definitely. I'd like to thank TAKT for sponsoring this episode. For more marketing news and marketing news podcasts, visit marketingnewscanada.com. And thank you for joining us today, live from Social Pacific 2025.